First up, is there any modifications or changes to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. I don't see anybody here from the public tonight. So we will move on to review and approval for minutes July 13th, 2021. Everyone have a chance to look those over? If there were no errors or items left out, I will hear a motion to approve.
Move we approve.
David first, or second?
I'll second.
Heather with the second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay. Up next, planning and zoning department fees and schedule recommendations with Jesse Woods, town administrator, zoning administrator. Thank you, Jesse.
Hello everyone, good to be on this side of the table.
I know, right?
I'm here to talk with you guys a little bit about the zoning fee schedule. So we rewind back, I don't know, John, you may remember this, when we merged the town and the village 8-ish years ago.
That was 2014,
Okay.
so 7 years ago.
Okay, yeah. We merged the town and the village zoning, planning, DRB, all under one roof. I was a trustee at the time. I guess I didn't realize at the time that the fee schedule wasn't merged. The documents weren't merged. We're still running off from a town and a village set of fees and, like I said, permits, applications, everything. Which is fine. It's just the weird part is the village has one fee schedule, the town has one fee schedule, and it's confusing for people, and it's kind of funky. So phase one is we want to merge the town and the village fee schedule. So by doing that at the same time, the select board actually asked myself and the planning commission, because of some recent situations with some hearings that had kind of progressed and dragged on. We looked at the DRB hearing structure, and we're actually losing money right now on certain ones if it goes to multiple hearings. Right now we're charging $150 for town, and if it goes to multiple hearings, we've lost that because we're paying DRB members $50 a pop to be at that meeting, plus my time, plus all that stuff. So kind of like I said, it was kind of two birds with one stone where we could, consolidate these two fee schedules, update the fee schedules, because I believe the village's last was updated was 2008. I think it says on top. I think the town, Billy Joe said she's been there 15 years and hasn't been updated. So in your packet, there's a kind of a lengthy Excel spreadsheet there where I looked at the similar towns to, if you take the town and the village together, and basically I did a kind of a comparison of everything. It's hard because you're not really comparing apples to apples in some situations the way different municipalities are set up, but basically I looked at everything from permits to DRB hearings to COs, everything. And not to bore you guys, or if you haven't read it, permitting wise I kind of did an average, and you'll see on that bottom where I took the 9 municipalities that we had, I averaged what their permitting would be for a 2,000 square foot residential, a 2,000 square foot commercial, kind of see where we fell in on that situation. We came in right. An average residential is $299.44. I also, statistically, I forget to tell you, I took the highs and the lows out. Derby came in at a really whopping low fee. St. Albans Town came in at a really high fee. So I kind of took those statistically out because it really would have thrown the average off. So the average is, for residential was just shy of $300. Average commercial was just shy of $380. We come in village at $315 and $355. The town comes in at $315 and $415. We're not too far off. The select board wasn't really concerned about that. What we kind of all came to was, again, the DRB hearing right now. If your town, it's $150. If your village, it's a weird a la carte thing. It's $125 for your first item, and then if there's any other, if there's a conditional use or a waiver or something like that, it's an additional $75 per. So you're paying $125 plus a say for each thing.
Plus the 7 plus the.
And I'll be fully honest, it took me a good month before I realized we had a village schedule. I thought I was just running off the town schedule. I didn't even realize. Because again, I went back to that time when I was just in an assumption we could merge all of the all of that together. So, sitting with the planning commission, talking with them, we kind of hammered down, there also should be in your packet another page, excuse the formatting of it, but it's just a new consolidated schedule. I'm here tonight not for a decision, I'm here for tonight on what you folks would like for involvement in this. Typically, it's been kind of the select board. I mean, the trustees still have to sign off on this because that's part of the bylaws. You folks are the decision makers, but how much, I mean, you are open obviously for how much little or how much or less decision you want involved in this. Again, like I said, at $150 or at $125, village and town respectively, we're losing money every time we're having a hearing, basically, is what's happening. And then if it goes into multiple hearings, we're really losing money.
So the biggest problem is DRB.
That's the biggest thing. I will say, you know, in the multiple hearing thing, a lot of that rests on my shoulders, making sure surveyors, engineers, applicants are prepared. This job, that's part of the deal when you go. But at the same time, you can only, you know, you can only leave so much blood out of a stone. Sometimes surveyors, engineers don't come prepared. Some of the language actually even talks in some of the municipalities where in the event of something, we hold the right to charge an extra fee. So it kind of covers your base. It's a little, I don't like the gray area stuff. Black and white to me is a little nicer when you can say, listen here, but there is gray area situations. Again, with one situation we've had right now, we've had a lot of the abutting property owners with a lot of concerns, so we've had to come back and forth with more information. It's not really anyone's fault, it's just people are looking for more explanation, understanding. So that's where it gets into some of that gray area about, you know, charging an additional fee. Right now, the planning commission wasn't wild about it. The select board, they kind of like the language part. If we, you know, if something happens, we can do this, is what they liked. Again, I'm here to ask whatever, how much input. Like I said, typically I don't know if this board has really had much input with a lot of the zoning stuff, the zoning DRB back.
Not since the merger.
Right.
Back when they were separate departments and the village had its own planning and zoning department and the town had its own. I think there was a lot more back and forth between the village zoning department and the board of trustees, but since the merger, there hasn't really been a lot of involvement. A few things over the years, but really just a few in a 7-year period.
And I was, you know, again, changing my hat and being on that side of the bench, I don't remember us really as a trustee, I don't remember myself being involved in much of that. But like I said, I'm here to open that if there are concerns, questions, you know, hey, we should be doing this, hey, we shouldn't be doing this. I'm here on behalf of the planning commission, because ultimately it's the planning commission and then ultimately it's your decision. It's kind of a weird paradigm there, but as an agent of the planning commission in a sense, so that's a really quick rundown. I mean, like I said, on the permitting side, we're good. Everything else, we're really good. It's just that DRB hearing of, you know, updating those fees and just making sure that we are, you know, covered financially. Because I did mention the DRB actually got a raise recently. They're having a very hard time holding members in the DRB. One of the requests that they've asked is shortening the length of meetings. So some of the meetings for DRBs were going from 6:30 till, you guys know, 10, 11 o'clock. So one of the things we're trying to do is hopefully we can kind of manage the meetings a little bit better so we're not taxing those members and then ultimately losing those members, because those members are like, well, if we're going to do this at 11 o'clock every night, I'm not doing it anymore. So you're trying to have that delicate balance between those things, because in my short couple months that I've been here, we've struggled to continue meetings, DRB hearings going because somebody doesn't show up and then we don't have a quorum for the next time, so we have to delay, and so it's a little bit of a balancing act. So I think if we have that little bit more money, if we do charge a little bit more, we cover our costs, we don't have to stack it with 5, 6 items, you know, and disperse those costs over that, and then that way we can, you know, we can kind of keep, hopefully, everybody happy.
Well, that'll never.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, that's the long short story.
So there's 7 DRB members, right?
There are 5 right now.
Okay, there's 5, and they all get paid $50 per meeting? Okay, so there'd be more than one permit in one meeting.
Right, it could be, so again,
Because that's like $250 a meeting.
it's $250 whack plus my time, right? You know, I'm hourly, so it's factored into there too. We also actually found out some wording in the bylaws before where we weren't charging for warning DRB hearings. We weren't charging the actual applicant, which that's going to change now too, because that wording is actually in the bylaws. So.
And how much is that?
It depends if you're warning the meeting. Depends on how many words it is. So the messenger charge is on a per word basis.
Right.
We've cleaned that up quite a bit too. We were really posting a lot of stuff. We condensed a lot of that stuff. We kind of looked at what other municipalities were doing, talked to some people. You know, all of a sudden you were going from a $160 ad. Now I think my last one was 30,
Right.
27, 30 bucks. Somewhere in there is what it was.
Streamlining is good.
You're just doing some simple math. If you warned a 100 word, you know, $100 thing, and then there was only one item at the DRB meeting,
Right.
and that's automatically $350.
Right.
So,
But again, like I said, the warning, that's where now, you know, looking at that verbiage in the bylaws, that we actually can tack that onto those applicants now, and they can cover that where, like you said, Sam, that's what I've been looking at. I was looking at, so every time these guys come in the door, it's $250. It's like, okay, so if you do have two items on the agenda that night, okay, you're dispersing that cost out, okay, it's not quite so bad, and then you're keeping that time allotment, you know, low. So if we can keep it, you know, that happy medium, you know, there's some of them on there you can see, I mean, there's some DRB hearings there that go into some really high numbers. You know, but I think if you're in that $250 range, $300 range, I think we're comfortable again with, you know, multiple in one shot. And again,
that would be per hearing.
right. And again, I mean, I want to fully stress that a lot of this lies on the ZA's shoulders and making sure these guys have, you know, their stuff in order. But again, it goes back to that language of, do we use the language that, you know, we have the right to. We have the right to charge you an additional, you know. But again, I'm not wild about the gray area.
So do you think that there's a reason why the village commercial was cheaper than the town commercial? Is it just like an incentive thing to get
Right, I don't know.
more
Exactly.
businesses into the business
Yeah.
district?
I don't know, that would have been back in 2008, right? I don't know if that was the case, why that changed. Again, not to throw something else on you, I was also asked about impact fees. And researching impact fees. We're not at the point of impact fees. I've done a little bit of research on that, and that'll make your head spin, how they come up with these arbitrary numbers. And there's some serious, like, I mean, some go to school, some go to highway, some go to rec. You have to have a capital plan in place. Those funds have to go boom, 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 boom. You know, they have to go specifically there. And again, you know, you run that risk of all of a sudden, you know, do you curb growth when you tell someone, what was it? One of the impact fees I read today was $5,000, all said and done. I think it was something like that. It was pretty crazy. So.
We're on order, and here we come.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're the same way, Brook is impact.
State, yeah, in the town of Georgia, a new dwelling is $3,500. Fairfax is $2,000. Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, Georgia, with school and everything, it comes to $4,500. Is what it is. $3,335, and then $1,165 for the school is how it breaks down. So again,
We don't have that.
we do not have that. We do. I was asked by the select board to look into that. Basically, the reason being, right now, you know, the emergency services side of things, the first response side of things are a tough thing to balance. So all of a sudden, if you have that extra money, the other one that you don't really think about is animal control. So what you have is a situation where you may have a, a residence that's a rental, the people leave and there's animals in there, and the bill for, the town for animal control, it's pretty crazy right now. So those were kind of the two. It was like, hey, maybe if we did an impact fee, we could kind of recoup, some costs. But again, I was reading the law today, the statutes on that, and it's pretty advanced. You got to go through Vermont League of Cities and Towns. You got to have a consultant group come in, because it's a very arbitrary number, but it looks arbitrary, but there is a reason why it comes up to these. It's not just a straight $3,500. It's a weird. Yeah, the total comes to that, but it's a very percentage-based thing of how they do it.
So the second sheet that you gave is just kind of a rough.
It's a
very
super
plan on
rough.
what you'd like to see.
Yes.
So-
yeah.
What exactly on here's changed other than the village raising to meet the town's commercial, and then the DRB charging per meeting?
And I
Just
put it
that.
at 200 to 250 because when I actually printed it, we weren't really sure. The select board was still on the fence about it. One of the board members actually asked me another question. I was just thinking of it. He asked me a question about doing a DRB hearing based off of square footage. So if you have a situation like, NERP and Tractor Supply coming in, there's not really very many municipalities that do that. Typically, you get that on the back end when you get a permit, because you pay on the square footage end of the permit, so you kind of get those costs covered on the scale of it. But yes, basically those two things are, we haven't gone back to the select board to address the square footage thing. What was brought up, basically just raising that fee. At the time we talked about 200, we were leaning more towards 250, if not 3.
So if we were to just factor those two numbers into our average, it would pick it up to roughly like $515 at that point. Instead of 150, it's 250.
Well, yeah, so the average on the bottom is just a straight permit. That's not for a DRB hearing, that's just a straight permit.
Right, but I'm adding that in.
Oh, right, yes.
So basically it's just gonna go up $100.
Yes,
for the-
right.
But it could also pick it up by $350 if they haven't added
Right.
DRB hearings.
If they haven't added hearing.
That may be a little bit of a enticing for people to have their permit in order the first time they go in.
Yep, that was an argument that was made at the select board. It's all of a sudden, it's funny, I was talking to, there's a new ZA in Georgia who literally started the exact same day. It was kind of this funny thing, and we were talking about it. They're actually, Georgia, she wants to do the same thing about raising the fee schedule, because they're having the same problem in Georgia with, if it's a multiple hearing, and I think their fees are actually even less than ours in Georgia, so they were having, it's kind of a funny, it's one of these things, I think, as municipalities, we've all been looking at each other's numbers for so long, and everybody's like, yep, Enosburg's good, yep, Georgia's good, yep, these guys are good, and then all of a sudden it's like, we've done this for 15 years and nobody's really changed, nothing's really changed at all. So, again, I'm not sure, I'm just, the feeling from talking with some of these municipalities, it seems that's kind of the case, that we're all running, and some have updated, some you can definitely tell. There's one that's heated versus cool space. Still. Yeah.
Well, you just said the word.
Yeah.
The policing on that would be a nightmare. Like, there would be a furnace in there, and then there wouldn't be a furnace, and there would be a furnace. Yeah. But anyway, so again, that's the quick and dirty of that.
So you were just looking to run this by us tonight?
Run it by you, and
Questions?
again, if you want me to be gone after this and just come back for vote, I'm happy. If you would like me to keep you updated, which I'm more than happy to, I'm more than happy to do that too. If you folks would like me to come back and you have some inputs on a future, that's totally fine too. So
I think the whole price raise thing is fair, because by the sounds you're losing money on some of the lengthier hearings.
It's been quite a while since
Yeah.
we updated
And
it.
if all of a sudden you can't get any DRB members at all,
Right.
that's not gonna put anybody any further ahead either.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that board can be 9. 7 or 9?
I remember being 7 when
Yeah,
I was
I can't remember, yeah, something like
So
that.
it is $300, you know, so.
Right,
If it's
right.
kind of a fluctuating cost on how many people you have to pay to be there, and
And one of the options too, I actually was just looking, I can't remember whose municipality was running alternates. It might be enticing, I don't know how that works with basically having somebody, you know, kind of in the bullpen is what I'm envisioning to have an alternate, you know, all of a sudden
Just
this and
inform.
you don't have to have a commitment. The only problem is, once you're involved in that hearing, you see it all the way through. Because at that point, if you're not in that hearing at any point, you cannot finish the vote out. That's the only problem.
right. It'd be
But
kind of
that's-
difficult to keep track of what items come up during certain meetings, if
Right.
there's a second or whatnot.
Right, and that's, I mean, literally in the last month, we had a situation, one of my members didn't show, so he was out of it, so we could vote on this, and then I had another one who was sick, so she couldn't vote on this, so it was a little bit of a like, okay, we had to stop her, like, okay, you can vote, you can't vote, you know, it's just one of those things. But the alternate thing I noticed, I can't remember where I was looking, it was today, I think, and I was like, that'd be kind of cool if you could have a bullpen member, you know, listen, you don't have to give the full commitment, but when I do need you, I need you to do this, you know, so.
Yeah,
But again, like I said, I mean, you guys can talk about it, John can get back to me if you want me to just, I mean, I'm more than happy to keep you guys, you know.
I mean, by the sounds, there's not really anything significant that's changed other than trying to get
No.
the money that you're losing out of multiple
Right,
every
right,
year.
it's just covering everything.
Yeah. The only question that I personally have is that what impact is raising the villages to meet the town's industrial rates gonna have, if
Right.
any? I mean, I don't think that extra $100 per permit is gonna be a make or break for
Right.
choosing a location of a new building.
Yep.
So I personally don't have an issue with this.
And the other thing is too, again, and I'll come back to you for that, is the forms. The updated forms, the village one is pretty old, pretty copied over, like it's getting to the point where it's like grayscale. Where you have the sketch plan on the back, it's really, so that's where we wanna, you know. Right now, the certificate of occupancy and those forms actually were consolidated at some point, so those are on one form, which we just need to sprucing them up with the regular general permit, you know, those forms.
So what would you need to do, draft a new ordinance and a new permit, and then just have us accept it?
I think you would have to, it wouldn't be an ordinance. So basically, you would have to, so the fee schedule, I believe, I have to look back and what the thing, so you would just basically, you'd have to come back and make a motion to accept the new fee schedule is what we have. And I probably at the time, I don't know about even with the forms, maybe just to cover it, if, you know, when we do the forms.
Yeah, and with the forms, if it's just a matter of they're getting really faded,
Yeah.
maybe you could just, as long as you can still read them.
Right.
Just, you know, redo them, retype them.
Right.
But if there's something that you want to change, if you don't like the format of the form, then you can play around with it to get it closer to something that would be more comfortable from you. And at that time, when you have something that you think would be better for future use, you could bring that back to the board along with the finalized fee schedule and just have them approve both if that
Yeah,
would
because
work for everyone.
like I said,
Probably be
ultimately,
the most efficient way
I
to do
think
it.
so too, yeah. Ultimately, I just would like everything under one, it would be nice to be under one header, because there is a lot of, for me, it doesn't, now I'm getting, I mean, obviously I've been under this for 2 months, but it's more for the, people out there, because it is very confusing, because people come in and they're like town or village or town, or what do I need, or this or that, you know what I mean? So it's one of those things where if we just streamline it, and like I said, it is one office, one everything, money's going to the general fund, everything, so it's like, here you go, here's this, and we can do that. And not to keep going on you guys. One of the other things, so the village bylaws are up next year for 2022. So the planning commission has to go back on those and update those, because it's been every 5 years, so it's 2017. One of the things in talking with Sean, Kyle, there's the municipal planning grant is coming up here, I think it's September 1st. There is a provision in that grant, that we can, and I left it on my desk. It's an update there's an update in that grant to update your bylaws. Basically there's a need for housing in the state of Vermont, basically is what it is. And there's a grant in there that you can update your bylaws to reflect, whether you need to change your bylaws, update them, whatever, to coincide with what's, kind of currently going on. And that's part of the municipal planning grant that's going to be, I believe the application opens up September 1st. So Sean sent me that. I've been working with him. If we can kind of get, if we can get that grant there and maybe update, the village's bylaws, the planning commission and the select board actually made a comment of combining the town and the village bylaws and having one big giant bylaw book. Which,
Yeah, I guess my comment about that is you could do it if you just wanted to have one document.
right,
But there are some really big differences between the village of Enosburg Falls and the town of Enosburg. Most of it has to do with the density of population. So you're not going to be able to just, take the village bylaws and apply them equally to the town or vice versa.
right.
It won't work. So
Well, and
I
that's
just caution you on.
No, exactly. And that's why I said I was kind of a little apprehensive at first. It came up in that conversation. We were talking about fees, about consolidating, and there is a lot that's the same, but at the same time, like you said, when you get into some of the downtown stuff, some of the higher density stuff, it is a
more
little
commercial.
Yeah, there is a little. Yeah.
They're very different living and working situations, town versus village. So I just caution you about that. I mean, if you just wanted to make one document out of them and blend them together, that'd be pretty easy.
Right.
But you're still gonna have you're gonna have to keep some really stark differences between the two.
Well, and I said that. I said, all of a sudden you're going to have, sure, there's certain things in there like you can differentiate, or you can, they're the same, but it's almost like you'd still have to have a subsection of village.
Right.
So really, what are you really combining the whole, it's 250 pages between both of them is what it is, So I mean, you're gonna consolidate, but how much of that are you really gonna,
Yeah.
shrink down?
One other comment I just want to make you aware of, Jesse, regarding the municipal planning grant coming up in September. You may want to talk with Sean a little bit more about that, because I'm just letting you know, I was told by the Enosburg Opera House, Friends of the Opera House, that the town was applying on their behalf for that same grant application to do a planning version for a build out of the Opera House, a renovation plan for the Opera House over the next 10 years or so. So, I don't know, just something to think about.
Yeah, there was, and
I don't know if you
again, I
might have-
apologize. I had my.
might be in competition with each other.
Yeah, no, it was definitely not just a straight municipal planning. There was another subset for, and I can't remember, I apologize, I had left it on there. It was basically to update bylaws. It wasn't the large, grant. It was kind of a sub-grant off from that.
Yeah, it's a planning.
It's a planning grant, but I can't
Right.
remember the words on what the actual term of it was. But again, Sean he's been
Yeah.
kind of the one that's been.
And it doesn't mean we couldn't do it, it
Yeah.
just means,
Right,
we might be in competition with
Right.
each other, town and village, if we're gonna apply for one project and they're gonna apply for a different project,
Yep.
and we just have to see how the state, would feel about that
Right.
awarding, what in their eyes is probably the same community. It is the same community.
It is, yeah.
But separate municipalities, a planning grant in the same year, giving each municipality a planning grant the same year. It might end up that the odds are against us on that, of both of us being able to get one. But it doesn't mean that, what's important concerning this municipality isn't valid, you know, and maybe if we end up being in competition with the town in this particular year, then, you know, maybe that's just the way it goes. But I just thought I'd mention
Yeah,
that.
no, thank you, yeah, like,
If you weren't aware of it, that I was told that the town is planning on putting in a municipal planning grant for this upcoming round in September.
Okay. No, that's good to know, thank you. Like I said, I know Sean has been the one that's, you know, working on that and then just kind of feeding me
Yeah.
information on from that. Because I said, well, when he first told me, I said, boy, this would kind of, you know, might line up really good if we can update these bylaws and, you know, have this portion of the planning grant pay for, you know, the upgrade of the bylaws, so. But anyway, yeah, that's what I have. Again, like I said, you guys can talk about it and let me know if you want any more involvement or any more concerns. This is going to be ongoing for a little while. The planning commission doesn't have another scheduled meeting, but we have another issue regarding driveways and changing some stuff around town, the town side of things. But so we'll be working on this here for a little while. So, you know, my office is always open. Just give me a shout if you have any concerns or anything. So
Good to know. Thank you.
yeah.
All right,
Yeah, all right.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right. Up next, emergency management plans for 2021.
So if board flips in your packet, you'll find a copy.
See you guys.
Hey, Jesse, of the draft emergency management plan. In this particular plan, it includes both town of Enosburg and village of Enosburg Falls. We file a joint plan together in this case. This is more of a piece of housekeeping type work. We have to do this every year. We have to update our emergency management plan and submit it to the state. We send it down to Northwest Regional Planning Commission. They review it, and then regional planning forwards it on to our state government. So Gary and I have been through this. We did make a number of changes. There were some things that just needed to be updated within the plan that we saw the town hadn't caught. The town did go through this once, but this morning Gary found a couple other things. They're relatively small things. Some of the phone numbers were wrong for some of the contact people in here. Also, he picked up that on page 10, the National Guard Armory is still listed as under government facility. On page 10 is, as we all know, that's no longer an actual National Guard Armory. It belongs to the town of Enosburg. So I don't know if, you know, they may want to change the name. They do have Billy Joe Draper
I
listed.
put that down, just fill it in, 'cause I didn't know,
Oh, you did?
I did that just to, so we had it. But I left the email to Billy Joe and to
Oh,
Joey
okay.
saying, I don't know how, here it is, I'm not sure if it's correct, but I filled it in, so it's not no longer a government.
Yeah,
Federal.
it's not a National Guard
Right,
Armory anymore.
right.
So, so that has nothing to do with the village, but it's something that the town should change for their contact information on that building. But that was kind of it. The other things I think are all valid as far as we can tell. There were a few phone numbers that needed to get updated.
Remember the last time
I
we did
just
this,
found a
it was
couple of
full
names,
of
too.
typos. Yeah.
Well, we added all,
Saw a couple of names.
we
Page
added
6.
our sites, our wastewater, our 42 Village Drive and our garage as hazardous sites, because we had to do a tier 2 every year with our oils and gas
Yeah,
and stuff. So that is added on there. And
Don't you
then
guys used to do a paint thing too?
well, paint is part of hazmat,
Right.
but it's a tier 2 of the state every year. We do it for the water department, the sewer department. We have chlorine, fluorine.
But
I also,
those are in there.
they're now, they weren't last year, but they were in this year.
Yeah.
And I also, the village, the town never added our equipment, so I added our equipment into the checklist.
Yep.
So Sandy, you said you
Page
saw something on
6.
page 6?
Religious facility, St. John the Baptist Church, that contact is Reverend Dan Jordan.
Okay, Dan
Father
Jordan.
Charbonneau's gone,
Jordan, J-O-R.
Jordan, and the 4464 is still fine. And St. Matthew's Episcopal, I believe that's Reverend Dr. Titus Pressler. Don't know, then the phone number is probably the church phone
Can
number.
you say the name again, Sam?
Reverend Dr. Titus, Titus Pressler, Presler. And that seems like I found somewhere to go.
Huh?
Yes, many.
I know.
Reverend Doctor.
Very nice man. Very smart man.
Were there any other errors that people saw in here, or updates, I should say?
Seeing things. I think that's all I.
Everyone else okay with what they see in the document? Okay, so we'll make those changes, Sandy, that you just pointed out. And if everybody's okay with this draft, then we would need a motion to adopt the local emergency management plan for 2021. And then we'll send this up to the town. I can sign the document. I'm listed as the signer on it. And then we'll send it up to the town, and I believe it's Larry Jarvis. He's to sign it at the town level.
John, I just had a question. Is there significance, like what's the significance of the highlights? Is that something?
That was just some of my changes I did.
Those are the
Okay,
things
okay.
Gary picked up this morning,
Great.
but it didn't make it into your draft on Friday. We hadn't noticed those, but Gary this morning had picked those up.
I highlighted the towns, they do what we changed on the plan.
Oh, okay, okay, just double checking that.
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess if everyone feels that this is all right, I'll hear a motion to accept the local emergency management plan for 2021 as written, but including the changes stated before.
I move we accept.
Saying with the first, or second?
I'll second that.
The second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Yeah, at least we have one this year, right?
Right?
Been a couple of years at least.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was either last year or the year before. We ended up approving in February the previous year's plan.
They didn't have any of our information in there.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Better late than.
right, so at least we're on it this year.
All right, up next, Trout Brook Pump Station Study Contract.
Yep.
Talk to that, Brian.
I'm guessing
Right.
a copy was put in your packets.
Yep.
So essentially, that was a project that was earmarked in our 20-year evaluation to do the engineering portion this year and then the actual upgrade next year. I think we budgeted for $8,000, which was approved. I think his proposal came in at $7,900. A&E has been our long-standing engineer, so it kind of made sense to have them come up with something.
So along with the request, I think the department's also looking for the board to waive the procurement policy because of the circumstances with the engineers that service our water and wastewater department. Aldrich and Elliott, and Wayne Elliott in particular has been the engineer for those two services for, well, over 25 years, going back to the late 1980s.
So obviously without too many problems.
Yeah, so, I mean, nobody knows our water and wastewater systems better than Wayne.
Yeah.
You're not gonna find another engineering service out
We
there
should
that
feel
knows
lucky.
it better. Right, so,
I'm sure this would be multiple times more if you didn't have that background that somebody would have to get learned up on.
Right.
So what exactly are you trying to upgrade?
The Trout Brook station, so that lies just past Leeches, down in the hole. When it was designed to pick up a lot more of the community than it does. Right now it picks up 3 houses. The components are basically all original, except for 2 compressors that were replaced. It's old technology, hard to find parts, expensive, looking to do a couple of different options that I think were in the packet, either revamping that into a wet well with pumps, or more likely, in talking with Wayne recently, getting like a package pump station, sort of like what we have across on Duffy Hill.
Slide it down in.
Dig a hole, tie it in. So there's a couple different options that I think are marked in there. But essentially, it's outdated equipment.
Right, it's one of those
done-
things you
done its
probably
job.
want to keep upgrading.
Yeah, I think it was made for more sources, now we're only digging 3, it's really oversized from what.
And I don't foresee anybody ever tying into that based on where properties are.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
pretty much the 3 existing probably.
Good enough. I have no problem with this. The board wants, I'll hear a motion to accept this bid from Aldrich and Elliott and waive the procurement policy.
Make a motion to approve it.
Leonard has the first, is there a second? Heather with the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, passes.
Before we move on, while we're on the topic related to the wastewater department, I believe there was another issue, Brian, you wanted to...
It's completely separate.
Right, it's a completely separate issue, but having to do with the wastewater department. Do you want to fill the board in, or do you want me to give them the broad strokes?
Or you can, and I'll fill in the holes. You're a better speaker.
Okay, well, I'll give them the very broad strokes, and then you can fill in the many holes. So, Brian was contacted by a film company called Peregrine Productions, and they have been hired to make a documentary film that's going to cover a fairly complicated issue, and that is CSOs across the state of Vermont. If people have forgotten what that terminology means, it stands for combined sewer overflow. And it's been a little bit of a controversial issue for some people. In my opinion, people that don't understand the science of it seem to feel that having CSOs within a municipal system is a bad thing. This film is going to center around the issues of CSO and try to identify the truths and the science behind them. It's not only going to be regarding the Village of Enosburg Falls system. They're going to cover a lot of different water and wastewater systems across the state of Vermont. But Brian was asked by Peregrine Productions if he would be willing to participate in that, perhaps do some interviews with the filmmaker, describing our CSOs here in the Village of Enosburg Falls and how they work, how they operate, their performance, and parts of it may or may not end up in the final film. We don't know.
Never.
Right, but Brian has been asked if he's willing to give some interviews and provide information to the filmmaker on that. Brian, was a little hesitant to just say yes, and contacted me, and I said, okay, well, I'm glad you contacted me before you said yes, and why don't we go to the board and just, make sure the board is aware of this. We certainly would not want you guys to be caught off guard if, some of what Brian did end up doing for the film actually ended up in the final version and you ended up seeing it someplace, or it ended up being a topic of discussion through a media outlet someplace. Or, you can imagine, there could be some conversations about it, depending on what the final version of the film looks like. So we thought we would just at least bring this to you guys and, you know, see what your thoughts were about it, whether you were comfortable with Brian talking to this filming company about doing a documentary like that.
I think it's a pretty cool offer.
Our name came up through the state as sort of a success story. So they like to highlight some of the projects we've done and some of the projects we have planned to do in the future is kind of the cusp of it.
Personally, I don't have a problem with it. I know Brian will do a good job and he'll give good, honest information to the filmmakers for them to use. So I don't have a problem, but I wanted you guys, you know, to be aware of this and to have the final say if there was somebody that this gave a little heartburn to.
I think it's wonderful.
Well, I spoke to a guy who, this is sort of a segment of a bigger project based on phosphorus TMDL. So there's a stormwater component, there's an affiliate through Green Mountain that was highlighted in there, and he had just nothing but praises to say about the guy. Very forthcoming, and so I'm not concerned about him twisting stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be was kind of one of my questions, was
Right.
how legitimate is this person and this project?
I was nervous, that's why I kind of waded into it, but in talking to him myself and then through this other gentleman, I feel like he's a pretty forthcoming guy to be working with.
And he's also, just for your information, in correspondence to Brian, the filmmaker has also given the village final editing on anything that would go into the actual film that's released for the final version. So if we wanted it, we would have the opportunity to review anything that he was planning to put in that final version and say, yes, that's okay, or no, that's not okay. So that, I mean, that's about as fair as you can get, I think.
Just don't forget about us when you make it big.
Yeah,
I'm already nervous, it's months
Who are
away,
they?
I'm not a...
of course, now I have to go home and research Peregrine Film Company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too when Brian came to me about this.
Did you do it already?
Just online. I mean, I didn't do like, you know, hours of research, but I did go online, found their website, took a look at a couple of the short versions of films that they have made in the area. They've made actually quite a number of similar type documentaries within Vermont and other parts of the country too. And so if you poke around on their website, you'll see little snippets within their website of, you know, film footage that you can look at from other documentaries that they've done.
And he sent me a link to the other components of this whole big project. If anybody wants me to forward those to you, you can preview those as well.
So it sounds like everybody's okay with Brian doing that? Okay.
Unless we dig up some ungodly dirt in the meantime.
I think you got 4 yeses.
Yeah. I think we ought to give him the
I think
golden
it's a
buzzer.
good thing. I think it'd be good to show what Enosburg has done, the efforts that we've made, so.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And we have, so it's, you know, it's
Absolutely.
good to have something positive to put out there.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All set. Thank you.
Alrighty, up next we have 2021 paving project financing bids.
So in the packet, you guys will have a memo from me. I reached out to 4 banks that the village has worked with previously. I got responses from 3 of them to cover the note for the paving project as a 12-year term that was specified. People's Trust came in at 2.3%, Vermont Bond Bank was 1.31%, Community National Bank was 2.73%. TD Bank was the 4th bank, and they didn't want to touch it due to staffing issues at this time. Based upon this, my recommendation is to move forward with the Vermont Bond Bank. They're significantly lower than everyone else.
Yeah, almost a full point.
Right.
Yeah, pretty easy for me, I think.
And to also waive the procurement policy.
But there's 3.
No, I have 3.
Oh, right, I'm sorry.
That was a different thing we talked about
Right,
earlier.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Nope, not a problem.
Yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. I'll hear a motion to accept Vermont Bonds Bank for the 1.31% on $198,990.
I made the motion.
I have
I'll
the
second
first,
it.
Sandy with the second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, Enosburg Initiatives Report.
I'm Jim tonight.
Hello, Jim.
Hey,
Hello,
Jim,
Jim.
would you kindly take the computer parts home I have in my bag so that you can click them with your computer,
No.
Jim?
No. So just a little update. Greta has one bike repair thing that's gonna go in at the kiosk on the rail trail. And there's one already installed in the park. And there's a third, and we've reached out, Jim has reached out to the Enosburg Elementary School because they do try to encourage the kids to bike to school, and asked if they thought maybe that would be a good place for that third station, and maybe make a project with the students in installing it, and maybe some things about bike repair. So he's reached out to Jen Hubbard, the elementary school principal there, and she's gonna throw it by their custodian, and
She seemed excited about
she
it.
seemed to like it, so
Yeah.
we'll hear back on that. And it was kind of a conversation we had at our EI meeting last week, and thought that sounded like a good idea.
Does the high school still have a bike program too? Didn't I have the shed by the new parking lot?
The shed used to be full of manhole, used to do something, and I don't know, I mean, even when I was back, and I haven't been there for a few years, I didn't see anything going on with it, so I don't know.
I know like the after school program is hoping to get a bike trailer, put in like a dozen bikes to do some after school activities with that.
You don't know anything about bikes being there?
I don't think they have any bikes there though.
Okay.
No, the elementary school, they have there are some bikes that have been purchased for student use.
Yeah.
In the after school program during the summer, they have a Tuesday wheels day, and then there's different stuff in the after school.
Yeah. And if you go by on any given day in the spring or fall, you'll see quite a few bikes hitched up in the front underneath the atrium. So that's kind of cool, and maybe get the kids involved in the project. John, did you talk to them about FCIDC likes to donate a bench and honor board members who've been there more than 20 years. And Steve Plouffe is retired from FCIDC, and he's been there 22 years. They would like to install a bench similar to the one that's at the kiosk, which I haven't seen. It's a combination of wood and metal. I think did you see your email this afternoon? You got an email
No,
from Tim?
I left work at 4:30
Okay.
to go get dinner, so it must have come in after 4:30.
Yeah, God, I know I saw something and things aren't downloaded in here, something, and you and I were in the same email, maybe
Who was that sent by?
Tim Smith.
Okay. Well, I'll see it in the morning.
Yeah. So they'd like to install a bench in honor of Steve Plouffe, and they asked Steve where he'd like to have it, and he'd like to have it in Lincoln Park, and so I guess they're gonna talk to you about either installing a bench or replacing a bench with that bench, if you have any benches that are maybe
Okay.
On
That's
their-
FCIDC,
on their
you're
age.
saying, right?
Yeah.
That's not EI, that's
No,
FCIDC.
no.
Okay.
If you have one that's aging out, or if you feel of another place that one could be, I think that's the thought, just kind of a heads up. I wasn't asked to formally request that at this time, kind of just an FYI, and I think you do have an email on that.
Okay.
Check for warp seats. Quite literally. I mean, some of that pressure treated stuff does warp after a while, and it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
particularly comfortable to sit on, so.
There are no dedicated benches in the park right now.
There is one, it doesn't have a back, but there was a
Stone
a stone bench put in, I can't remember what's his name, or he was one of the observers, passive, Yeah.
You're talking about the marble bench or
Yeah,
granite
Yeah, the
bench?
granite bench.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the only one that I
King,
know.
was that his
Yeah,
last
his
name?
last name is King.
You're right.
I can't
Michael?
remember his first name now, but his last name is
He's
King.
deceased.
Yeah, he passed away.
And that's the only one that I know that's dedicated in the park. I don't know of any others. The other thing that was talked about is just a little awareness that there's a welcome center that's being run out of the Masonic Hall on Saturdays from 10 to 2, run by volunteers. Dave and Sally Trihorn have taken the lead. They've cleaned up the atrium of that building, and they have some real estate signs they put out on that when they're there saying, hey, we've got a welcome center open.
I've seen one.
Yeah, and they have pamphlets of various businesses, walking map, whatever, answer questions. kind of born out of when they were working on the tower and they were up in the hoist. People come in the park and then they'd see them and they'd start asking them questions. And so they said, let's try this again. We tried it at the Opera House, didn't have a lot of success. And then hopefully they'll have more success right there on Main Street.
Too far out of the way.
Yeah,
This is like, you know, right in your face kind of
Yeah.
thing, so it's much easier for the people to see.
and then the only other thing, we went around the table, we got an update on the Historical Society. They did get the, I don't know if people are aware, there was some original books of the Spavin Cure that somebody had, and they did acquire those, which is pretty, you know, kind of a cool thing, authentic.
Yeah, they're the ledgers from the
The
stuff.
ledgers from the Spavin Cure, and one of
All
the
handwritten.
relatives.
Cursive.
Yeah.
Beautiful cursive, impossible to read.
Well, actually, you're a historical society guy, right?
Yeah.
So tell me when I get it wrong. So they've acquired that, and also they're in conversation with the Legion and maybe you guys about where possibly that steam piece of mechanical generator can go. No? Well, they're trying to find space.
There's an article in the latest
I know they've
Alban's
been in touch.
Messenger about it.
I know they've been in touch with the Historical Society.
Yes.
They have not approached the village.
Well, it's just today's paper. When did the St. Albans Messenger?
Tuesdays and
I
Fridays.
don't keep track anymore.
Well, the one that came today, I was looking at it, there's a little article about this happening in Enosburg and the VFWs involved.
Legion, yeah.
Or is it the Legion?
The Legion,
We
yeah.
have no view.
The Legion is, it says, the article says the Legion is looking for a place to display it.
Have you seen it?
Now,
You'd love
I haven't, I can only
It's
imagine.
very
though.
cool.
Vermont Dairy had an article on it too, and they had some cool pictures up.
Yeah, so they're
I
gonna
think it
try
was
to,
a question of where it was going to go.
there's a question of where it's
Where
gonna
it could
go, and right of way with the railroad, and knowing that the state owns that area, so, I'm not sure.
Not a lot of enthusiasm from the Historical Society, putting it on a property by
No?
the depot.
I'm assuming this is
I'm
like a
not saying
pump
nobody
size
said
steam
nobody.
generator, so it's easily stored.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, like,
It's about as big as this room.
from me to that hedge over there.
Yeah.
There's probably not room in the generator, diesel generator room.
No.
Is that
Oh, no,
through the time, so this is,
You would have to go.
I can check it out, but it sounds.
Yeah, you do, you gotta check it out.
When it's been described to me, I mean,
I
it's
definitely
kind of,
thought,
they're gonna have to build, wherever they end up putting it, if this is really what the Legion wants to do. I mean, they're gonna have to build a building to contain it.
Almost like kind of a lean-to sort of a thing to
Or-
protect
or
it
maybe
from the
I wouldn't
weather,
say,
or a building.
like a building, just like we have for
Just to
our
keep it
diesel
safe and-
generators,
yeah.
right? I mean, Village owns 2 of these, the diesel number 1, which is on the other side of the
Right.
riverbank. And then we also have a diesel generator inside the electric department building as well.
Can't have somebody whacking off pieces to sell it up.
yeah. Well, anyways,
It'll
if you
just- it'll
haven't
rust
checked
and
it out,
decay if you don't protect.
you should probably at least, maybe get them on your email list with your historic newsletter. That might be handy. And then the last thing was,
I mean, I have one more thing. to
yeah,
say.
go
The
for it.
one place that did, the one conversation I've been in, the only place that's made much sense to a couple of us was in the parking lot next to the depot and the VFW.
Oh,
On the
right.
town parking lot?
Yeah. Whoever, and then we didn't know whose parking lot that was, so we didn't
That's
get
the
very far on
town's,
it.
yeah.
But that seemed, it would tie it into
You
the,
mean right outside the
You
Legion?
mean the one that's
Yeah,
beside
yeah.
the
No, no,
Legion?
he means between Bates
Beside
and,
the Opera
Oh.
House.
Legion, no, between
Those are
Bates
private.
and the Legion.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's private.
You're talking about across the street or next?
between base, that she said it better.
On the Legion side.
On the Legion side.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We didn't go anywhere with that, but it was the only one, it was the one place that, to me, it seemed, okay, then the museum wouldn't be responsible necessarily, but it'd be, if people came to see.
How much
everything.
parking would we lose?
What, yeah, well, we got some parking problems.
You don't have access to your email, because now it just struck me that, you're gonna need to come back on Tim Smith's, because he's asking about if there would be help with installation and et cetera. There are some other questions, so I think you're gonna wanna bring that up again later.
Yeah,
Next meeting.
I'll read it tomorrow
Yeah.
morning and
Yeah,
I'll follow
just,
up with.
it's coming back to me now. And then the Vital Village, so I've got an EI hat on and then it's just as a townsperson. So I've been concerned about the results on the Vital Village survey, particularly when I did attend a lot of those meetings in the first phase. What would we call the first phase? The $60,000 grant, that first phase where we,
The one we did a few years ago?
yeah.
You mean, well, that was called the Vital Village Project, it was a master plan.
So the Vital Village Project Master Plan phase, I attended a meeting at the library, a meeting at the high school. I participated in the display in the park at Harvest Fest. That we did a walkabout and everything, and there was so much enthusiasm and positive feelings from a multitude of people that weren't EI. I mean, I'd like to try to dig up old pictures and identify who was at these things, say, where are you now? Because there was such positivity about this and a lot of enthusiasm. And then we do this survey and like, I don't think it's replicating or demonstrative of the wider group of people. And I'm not sure why some participated then or now, or if they're the same, why they would do a 360, 180 into another direction. But we have been able to gather some good grants and some good state attention and from other agencies that have provided us grant money on various projects. And a lot of that, I think, has come because Enosburg looked like it was going somewhere and it had a positive feeling about it. And if we stop this Vital Village thing in the tracks, I think it's going to be so hard to go out and get money from some of these places when they say, well, you had it, and everybody said no. You know, they like to pursue things that are moving forward, and if we're going to show that we're going to stop in its place, I think the negative consequences, we're going to have that effect for quite some time. And I think there needs to be a concerted effort on portraying those projects in a multitude of ways, and the one that gets me, that I can't understand why anybody would say no to, is safety. I hear, and we're not going to have a police officer planted at both ends of Main Street 24/7, it's just not going to happen. And some of these jet outs and build outs are made to make people slow down, and they work. You go through St. Albans, you slow down.
That's why everyone needs it.
Yeah, I just think we need to look at it as a safety fact, even if people are saying, the town looks beautiful the way it is, we don't want to change anything. Safety alone. I don't think turning a couple of years older all of a sudden made me intolerant of speeders and loud pipes. I mean, I have a Harley and that's pretty loud, but these cars, the other night I could hear it go all the way out, probably by Sid Bergson's. It was so loud, and they fly.
The
so
Black
fast.
Mustang covered both sides of Main Street this afternoon,
It's
all at the same time. Happens when you fishtail right down Main Street.
Yeah, and the cops never,
they're not in the right place, the right
Hold
time. A lot of this design wasn't just for aesthetics, it was for safety. And I think if people look at it as that rather than, I don't understand this, no, we don't want to do anything reaction. So I am nervous about that, and I would like to get involved in the Vital Village portion whenever I can. I don't know when the next meeting is. We asked when the next meeting is. I don't think there's a plan for a next meeting yet. But I have a lot of concern there, and I think we need to think about the ramifications. And I know eventually that decision is going to land here.
Mm-hmm.
So,
How many responses did the survey get?
I think it said 95.
95.
And how many just said don't do anything?
They said substantial.
Yeah, there was no figure given that I saw anywhere.
In the report, they didn't list like.
It just said,
Who said what?
that the majority was negative.
We're getting into some areas that I'm not really sure that you as a board want to be discussing right now. As I said last meeting when this was brought up, you are going to have a discussion and a presentation with Du Bois and King present, which is the organization that did the survey. The management team and Du Bois and King met on the 20th. This was actually part of my manager's report that I was going to go through, but kind of jumping the gun a little bit here. So I would just caution you as a board. Susie, I think, is not speaking on behalf of EI necessarily, but sharing her own ideas and thoughts as a citizen within the community. So need to take all of that, into place too, into consideration.
I would like to clarify that it was on the EI's agenda.
Yeah.
And I'm not
But-
speaking for them, it was of the same flavor, but I'm speaking for myself. But I would like an answer to that question as a citizen.
What was the
number?
What was the percentage? So we went through this during the management team meeting on the 20th, and it was about 62% strongly felt that the village should do nothing. So that's a very strong majority of respondents.
About 57 people.
Yeah.
But as I
Well,
said,
it's good to actually know.
yeah. But as I said, D&K is going to come in, and maybe that's a good segue to go to manager's report. I don't know if you still have more.
Do you have a date when the DNK comes in?
No, we don't. No.
I have a comment. This is the main reason I came tonight as well. I did not have any idea these results are the way they are. But I was struck at that meeting at the library at the beginning of the inability of the contractor to present stuff that lay people could get interested in and pay attention. And that was presented again in spades in the three things. It's just was way too complicated, way too complex on the page. And did not ask people directly, do you like this idea or not? In a way that would allow it to ask for a lot of details. I filled it out. I think the contractor should be questioned fairly carefully about the way they went about this. It's not how I was in that kind of business, and it's not the way I would do it, dealing with a population like we have here. I think that would be really distressing. I had not heard that.
Well, I have let the engineer know that since the results of the survey have become quasi-public, there has been a lot of discussion. This has turned into an extremely political issue, and that they should be prepared to answer questions regarding the survey and how it was completed.
So the study hasn't been released yet?
Well, it has, to the management team. I mean, I don't think we put it on the Vital Village survey or anything, because you guys as board members really need to have this discussion, I think, first. It's important that you guys have the ability to understand this information, analyze it, and if you need to, have it interpreted for you by professionals, and that's why we want to have them come in and have this discussion before there's a major set of individual discussions that start happening between the different factions within the community. And unfortunately, that's what has happened now. Now we have like a bunch of factions within the community that are all debating and fighting with each other about the results of this, and in some cases even calling into question whether the survey was fair. And I think that's really too bad, because we took some extra measures to try and get everybody's input on this, and as it turns out, we're putting a lot more effort into the study than we had originally anticipated. We're doing that because we want to get good and accurate information that is reflective of the community at large.
And I'm not fighting with anyone about the numbers or anything, and I don't even know where I heard it. I thought I saw it on Facebook or something.
Actually, that's where I saw it.
So I don't know about it being
So maybe-
quasi-public.
Maybe somebody well, it hasn't been put on the Vital Village page, maybe
No, this was,
somebody-
the run-of-the-mill.
Yeah,
if
I
you
don't
say
know,
it that way.
maybe one of, maybe, I don't know how
I'm
it got
just-
on Facebook, but I
I'm
have
just
no
would
explanation.
like,
for it.
and I'm not questioning the survey per se, I'm thinking there was an effort to get people to respond, from some people, and that's fine, but I would like to look at that whole project as a totality and take, and not forget the numbers of people that were involved in the first phase. Between input on board in the park to, must have been 30 people at the high school.
Yeah, there was quite a lot of participation.
There was a lot of participation, and that was a whole different inflection, so don't forget that now that we've got to this
And I
point.
feel like,
Yeah.
Suzie, like,
And
since
those-
the pandemic, like, the conversation, like, really kind of dulled down. Like, everybody had a different focus, which was responding to the pandemic.
Yeah,
And then, I think like, my feeling anyway has just been there have been only, the conversations are seem few and far between with the Vital Village. And so I think like the lull is kind of part of
Stagnating,
why
yeah.
people are starting to question, because they want information. People were ready to get going, like you were saying in the meeting before. And again, the pandemic has stalled a lot of stuff.
yeah.
But hopefully we can have that meeting with D&K soon. I think it was like our hope that it was going to be within the next 2 meetings, is what I feel like you said last time.
Yeah, so again, this is all part of what I was gonna do as the first subject in the manager's report, so I don't know if you want to transition to
DI
that,
all
but-
set, so we can just screw it into manager's board,
Yeah.
we'll go.
Yeah.
So, but if it makes you feel any better, Suzie, your concerns about some of the things that have happened over the past 3 years concerning the Vital Village efforts and not forgetting about that participation as well, were all discussed by the management team and D&K in our meeting on the 20th as well. There were quite a few people actually on the management team that reiterated that same theme several times during that meeting.
That's good to hear.
It's not, I think many people feel as well that this one survey shouldn't necessarily, take away all the effort and all of the other participation that has occurred on this project over a 3-year period. But I will say again, the Board of Trustees ultimately will decide, whether to move forward with any phases of the Vital Village project or not. I mean, that is their decision to make as a board. So with that, why don't we go into manager's report, and I was going to talk a little bit about this. I think we've covered some of what I was going to talk with the board about under the Vital Village scoping study. So management team met on July 20th after some deep discussion regarding the results of the public survey. The group came to a basic consensus to recommend to the Board of Trustees a greatly scaled down version of the access alternatives model of the scoping study. So if you don't remember what the access alternatives was, that was the model that D&K put together that actually increased parking by a couple of spaces on Main Street, but it also took away some parking on Depot Street. And the net effect of the two was a loss of 2 spaces between Main Street and Depot Street. So what the management team agreed to after a lot of discussion was, okay, the center of a lot of the concern that we seem to see in the feedback from the survey was parking. People are scared to death that there's going to be reduction in parking spaces. So let's alleviate that at least. If we bring in the access plan, that's actually going to add 2 spaces on Main Street. We will not put into effect the reduced parking space part of the plan on Depot Street and still leave the parking on Depot Street that was proposed. So that's what we meant by a scaled-down version of the access alternative model. And the conceptual idea, as I went over, was to not eliminate any parking spaces, but we did feel that we did want to recommend to the Board of Trustees the consideration of most of the pedestrian safety and landscaping items that were also a part of the access plan. So not taking away parking, but taking the aspects of that model and still doing the pedestrian safety issues and the landscaping issues that were part of that. So by pedestrian safety, what I meant, or not me, but what the management team meant is, so we were going to do some augmentations of crosswalks. These included bump outs in some cases, and we were still going to recommend doing some improvements to the intersection of Dickinson Avenue and Main Street as well as a part of those recommendations to the Board of Trustees. There's a little bit of a variance in that too, that the management team had a lot of discussion about. So one of the pedestrian safety areas that were slated for improvements under the access plan had to do with where the rail trail crossing is on Main Street. And there were some fairly sizable bump outs that had been planned under the access version of this, the access alternatives model of the plan. As I said, after a lot of discussion, we came to an agreement, a consensus at least, that we could still support that, but we would scale back the bump outs. So the bump outs would still be there, but they wouldn't be as pronounced as they were showing in the access model, but would still be there, so still gives some measure of safety and demarcation to that crossing
And the
area where the
illusion.
rail trail is, yeah. So, that was another compromise that, we decided we could support. At least nobody got everything that they wanted out of this, but the meeting became kind of a series of compromises with each other that, okay, if we do this, can everybody at least stand behind that and say, yes, I will support that? And at the end of it, that's what we came up with. So,
Can I ask a clarifying question?
go ahead.
So when you say Dickinson, where the kids cross over towards Marketplace, so there'd be something there that would improve safety, because
Yes.
that's really rough with the
Yes,
students.
that was one of the
So you'd have
recommendations
that-
we wanted to keep.
Kind of slowing traffic down the other end, and then you'd have something up by the rail trail where people's across. You'll have something. Now, if this scaled down version, there's nothing to prevent that scaled down version in 2-3 years down the road saying it's not enough to bumping it up at that point. There's nothing that prevents further movement in the future.
No, but again,
Okay.
all of these decisions are up to the Board of Trustees, and the management team and D&K are just going to be making some recommendations to the board.
Yeah.
The board can do what they want to with those recommendations. It really is up to the Board of Trustees to decide what they want to do with that. But, as a management team, we felt these series of compromises, now getting this feedback from the public survey, was something that would at least keep some important aspects of the access alternatives model in place, but still recognize what we perceive to be the major concern of the results of the public survey, which seemed to be parking.
Right.
At least that was our interpretation of what that survey meant. What people were trying to tell us was, don't take away parking. Keep the parking there, we want the parking. So, Dubois and King has agreed to meet with the Board of Trustees at a regular meeting, date to be determined, and go over the results of the public survey along with the final recommendation on a revised plan from the management team. So So that the revised plan is what I just went over with you guys, the modified access model. So the reason we don't have a date yet is this is obviously gonna add some more time on D&K's end. Based on this, they're now gonna have to go back and, reconfigure essentially another model based on the feedback that they got from the management team and do this revised version of the access alternatives model with the modifications and, have that drawn up in an engineering spec. So that's going to take a little time. They wanted the ability to go back and talk with their internal team, with the D&K team, the 4 or 5 representatives that they have from D&K that have been working with this project with the village of Enosburg Falls. And Chris Sargent, who is leading up the D&K team, said he would get back in touch with me once he had an idea of how much time this was going to take them to reconfigure that, incorporate all of the ideas and the instructions that the management team gave to them. And then he's got to put together a presentation and do a more formal analysis of the public survey that was done so that he can explain that both to the Board of Trustees and anyone from the public who comes to the meeting once it gets set. So we don't have a firm date. Hopefully it'll happen within the next 2 to 3 meetings. Don't think it'll be any longer than that, certainly, but we don't have an exact meeting date yet. So, and again, I'll just say, as I've said a couple of times, just remember, these are recommendations. Ultimately, the Board of Trustees has the final decision about what you want to do with the result of this study. And that's what this is right now. It's a scoping study. This is, a design that has been put together through, multiple people and organizations working to try to refine a plan that will hopefully work for this community, both functionally and politically for this community. But at the end of the day, it's really up to the board, up to the village of Enosburg Falls to decide what you want to do with that scoping study. And this wouldn't be the last one, as was brought up at the April 28th, I think was the date, when we had the last public meeting on this where all the alternative plans were presented. The most logical thing that would probably happen after the scoping study, if the Board of Trustees decides you want to take action on the recommendations that come from the management team and DuBois and King, would then be an engineering study.
Oh dear God.
Because this is not, right, this isn't actually going to put like an engineering plan in front of you. You're not going to be able to take this scoping study, hand it to a contractor and say, hey, build this. They're not going to be that detailed. So if you do decide to take action and move this to the next logical step, that would probably be to have an engineering study done on whatever those recommendations end up being and whatever the Board of Trustees ultimately approves moving forward on in that scoping study. And you could, you have the right too to make your own modifications. If there's some aspects of the scoping study that's, recommended by the management team that you don't like, or you think there are some things that were, taken out that should have been left in, or vice versa. It's your right as a board to say, well, we want to put this back in, or we want to take this part out. So it's a study. That's what this is. It's a study to try and figure out, what a good plan would be for this community to try and make some improvements in the downtown area.
Anyone have a book on how long a typical engineering study is?
And how much it costs? Put all that money into something that
Having
built.
dig-ready plans is going to cost quite a bit of money.
Yeah, I'd hesitate to give a number. on that, I have a number in my head, but I don't wanna say it, and then, you know, it comes back significantly more or
First
less.
blush, I like what you had to say, because it focuses on safety first, and it addresses the parking, and there's nothing that can be said, because it's adding 2 pieces of parking. So you know, personally, without even seeing it, I would support something like that as a citizen, and even having my tax dollars help something like that, because it's just a matter of time before someone gets really hurt. It's not good, and I think it would be a great start, and I think we need to see something happen, because the stagnation and the timeline has just lulled everybody to sleep, so I think I like the recommendation.
One other thing to consider too, though, is like you commented earlier on starting small, and there's nothing holding us back from going bigger. But just remember that if there's something that we want to modify in the future, it's going to also require another engineering study. So the 30, 40, 50, 60, $100,000 worth of engineering studies that we may spend, if we wanted to change it, we may have to spend it again. So that's the only, I guess,
And then the
word of
cost of
caution, to do it right the first time.
We're gonna think carefully the first.
Yeah. if they want to. Yeah.
And in terms of the timeline, Susie, you know, I would imagine probably that, unless the Board of Trustees feels otherwise, I would imagine probably the village would be looking for grant funds to complete that engineering study. So, you know, it's time doing that research, applying for the grant, hopefully you get it. And then once you get it, you know, you're probably looking at about a year, give or take, to complete the engineering study. So.
I was disappointed in the first round that, you know, we put this up for 60,000. Oh, didn't the bids come in at 60,000? And then we wanted to put posters up, and they complained because they weren't going to supply the phone board. And I'm thinking, really? Like, I questioned some of the lack of vested interest for the community in the way they reacted for that amount of money. It just was frustrating.
Are you talking about the master plan or this
First
one?
the first one, yeah.
The master plan, yeah.
So, I mean, it's just the money that is being spent to get to a point when something actually happens. Just.
Yeah.
Like really, realistically, how much does a bump out cost? You know, 2 yards of concrete, some rebar?
Yeah,
But like, how much does it cost to get there?
right,
Yeah.
right.
That's,
Yeah, it's the Vermont thing, I think. I don't want to waste the time. It goes way back when they were going to build a building, and they had it so engineered, whatever, and everybody voted down in the cost, and it was like, we could get a local contractor to get in there and build it for a third of the cost. You know, not now, but at that time, so anyways.
Yeah. Well, so hopefully that gives you a little more information about.
It does,
Thank you.
stay tuned for a date when they're coming up to
Right.
give us a presentation.
Yeah, I will. I'll try.
But in a nutshell, that's gonna be the recommendation that's gonna be made to the Board of Trustees from the management team and D&K.
Nice.
And, yeah, we just need to hear back from D&K and when they can get that prep work done so we can get them scheduled for a board meeting.
The details of the first phase of the project, where minutes were kept or notes on meetings, where is that retained in the village office?
The last meeting?
The
The
first phase, where
The management.
where I would like to say, who are these people that were there that were enthusiastic, and where are they
The
now?
library, the high school.
Like, where are those reports retained? In your office, or?
Yeah, we've got most of it. Greta Brunswick, I would say, has probably everything.
Okay.
Greta was the project manager
Yeah.
for that master plan phase of the Vital Village
Mhm.
project. So I would say Greta probably has everything.
Yeah.
We have a lot in this office.
No, that's fine,
So
thank
it
you.
depend on what you're looking for specifically. Yeah. Okay?
Okay.
So, moving on. The next thing I wanted to bring up to the board is more a VEPSA related issue, Vermont Public Power Supply Authority.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks for coming. Just want to make you guys aware of this because it may end up making some adjustments within the VEPSA organization over the coming months and things that they're working on. So over the course of the past spring and summer, there are several members of VEPSA that have gone through leadership changes. Barton Village and Jacksonville Village have both had their electric utility managers resign their positions, and their respective boards have been unable to fill those vacancies. As well, the Village of Johnson's manager has announced that she will be resigning as well recently, and it's my understanding that Johnson is also going to be conducting a manager search.
They just resigned from the VEPSA or resigned from their?
Resigned from their positions as managers. So
Wow.
no longer going to be working for the municipalities. So as a result, VEPSA is currently now attempting to help these municipalities, in particular Barton and Jacksonville, with its own staff, with VEPSA staff, especially in Jacksonville and Barton's case, because they've been for a while now without a manager, just having that vacancy, and they're starting to get a little concerned about, staying pace with things, keeping up to date with things as they need to get done. So VEPSA's staff is now splitting some of their time in trying to help Jacksonville and Barton, and two staff members from VEPSA are actually spending a lot of physical time in those respective offices. So not just working, by computer from their normal workstations, but actually being physically present.
That's good. They obviously
in
need to help.
municipal offices. Right, and the VEPSA Board of Directors supports this. We recognize that as a joint action agency, we need to try and help each other. If somebody is, in a bad situation and needs some assistance. However, we also recognize that as a result of this, some of VEPSA's staff is being pulled away from, from some other things that, had planned to be done during the summer and fall of this year. And it's quite possible VEPSA might start running a little bit behind in some of the projects they wanted to get done this year itself. So I just want to give you guys a heads up on that. If, for example, we talked about having VEPSA staff look at a solar battery storage project for us this year. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but I can foresee that, that might get delayed a little bit now as a result of some of the shuffling around of VEPSA staff members to try and help Barton and Jacksonville. And
Can only do so much.
yeah, and we'll have to see what happens with Johnson, whether they're able to fill that position, relatively quickly or not. But I just wanted to mostly give you guys a heads up about it, and in case you start to notice that, didn't VEPSA say they were going to do this for us? What happened with that? How come they're not on top of that right now? They'll get around to it if something does have to get put on the back burner temporarily, but I just want to warn you there might be some delays, and this is the reason why. But on the upside, this is one of the good things, I think one of the positive things that can happen when you're part of a joint action agency, especially a public one like we are. I mean, that's the reason that VEPSA exists, is to try and help all of its members, be the best that they can. And that may at times mean taking VEPSA staff and using them physically in different places as well.
That means they're standing up for what they stand for, so
Yeah.
I think that's pretty commendable.
Yeah. Okay, and then Church Street, St. Alban Street sidewalk project out front here, you guys may have noticed, this project is now complete.
Smooth as can be.
Yeah, I think it came out pretty well.
My feet will tell you yes.
All right, good. Was finished last week, and so hopefully people in the community will get many years of good service out of these new sidewalks. And that's it for manager's report.
Okay, sorry, Ally, we skipped over you for the mid-year financial report.
Oh. That's right.
Alright, did everyone have a chance to either review what I emailed to you or grab your packet out of your bin, just so you know what I'm talking about? This may be more of a condensed version than what you're used to. I'm still familiarizing myself with the budget, and every month seem to dive in with more of an understanding and equally just as many more questions about everything. So at this moment in time, obviously this is through the end of June, I don't have any major concerns as far as where everyone is, as far as pace for being at 50%. Everyone is pretty well below that. Looking at the forecast for the end of the year, nothing really jumped out as me, major concerns. Everything is looking to be right about within par of what we budgeted or a little bit better. I did pull, just based off of our conversation at the last meeting, had the staff put some numbers together for me as what our actual arrearages are and in comparison for the last couple of years. If you look on just page 2 of the notes, I compare 2019, 2020, and 2021. We're about a 52% increase overall compared to what a normal, quote-unquote normal year pre-pandemic for 2019 was. We are sitting slightly better than we were last year as of June 30th. They did just open up Vcap 2, which is a program that we were successful with the first time. Our customers have to apply. We can't apply on behalf of any customers. But if they do apply, the money comes directly to the utility versus going to that customer. Like I said, looking at the numbers, we were pretty successful with that the first round. So we are encouraging, we're sending out door hangers, doing everything that we can to kind of get the word out there about this program. PUC has actually required that we, on our disconnect notices, since the moratorium has lifted, they have to be approved, and it has to include the specific VCAP 2 language on it before we can actually do disconnects. And if anyone tells us that they have applied or in the process waiting for a decision, we can't disconnect. But right now I think our disconnects, if we were to send them out today, we're just under, I think, 170 notices. So 170 customers at this point in time would be getting disconnect notices. There is the ERAP program too that I think I talked to you guys about the last time.
Yep.
We've had a few people apply so far. To my knowledge, no one has actually qualified or got the final decision back. That was a lot stricter requirements on that end. So cash flow wise, I kind of did a similar comparison just to see where we're at this moment. I know the biggest concern, with my understanding, has been for the last couple of years is with the electric fund. Some of that is due to the FERC relicensing, which is the one-time fees. We have access to line of credit, which has helped. So I'm keeping kind of just a close eye on that and where we're at. And John and I just had a conversation about all of this the other day with the FERC relicensing and the use of the line of credit to make sure we're not putting ourselves in a different hole, because we will have to look at paying back that line of credit obviously at some point. So that's going to be a conversation for the near future.
Why is the general fund substantially higher this year? Just because the paving project came under bid?
For cash flow wise, I think it's just the timing of, right now they do have an outstanding interfund loan from the wastewater department that we have not paid back, and in comparison to last year and the year before at this time, we had paid back most of our interfund loans, so that's why the cash flow was so tight. But then in July, August, had to turn around and borrow more. So the general fund does have an outstanding interfund loan with the wastewater department from March for $117,000. Once tax revenues received, we'll be able to
Okay, yeah.
pay that back off.
Yeah, general fund is always,
Yeah,
it's difficult to gauge through the course of the year, and sometimes, as you can see in the 6-month report, can be somewhat deceiving.
mhm,
Because, it's kind of a funky way that we fund it. We run almost an entire year, and then we collect the taxes to support the
what we
department
did the previous year,
at the end
right,
of the year.
right.
So we end up having to borrow a lot of money through the course of the year from other departments in order to keep the general fund afloat and be able to pay our bills and expenses for it.
Taxes are due, what, September?
Typically, they're due around the end of October. It varies a little bit from year to year. Usually, you guys set the tax rate the beginning of September, and we have the taxes due around the end of October.
They have to be 30 days from the
Yeah,
time
you
that
have to
people
give 30 days
receive.
notice.
Usually between the three, everything is between October and November.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
So it looks a little funny, but then, we collect the taxes at the end of October, and then we pay back all of the debt to the other departments we've been borrowing from.
Is there any way to get out of that?
That cycle of, yeah, well, there
Because
are.
you're always spending that.
There is, and I've actually,
service.
yeah, and in some past years, I brought, some of these things up to the board, but at least in those years, the board decided not to do them. There are ways to get around that, and they all have to do with collecting your taxes earlier, though. A lot of municipalities in Vermont and in other parts of the country too, don't just wait until the end of the year to do a one-time collection. Some municipalities do quarterly
Yep.
deposits, so rather than billing once at the end of the year, you bill once quarterly, which keeps, cash running into your general fund through the course of the year.
Franklin does theirs in the summer, so that's probably for the same reason to help with that, I would think.
It could
Because they're
very
much
well
earlier
be.
than ours.
Yeah, could very
Yeah,
well
in
be.
Bakersfield since like early October, isn't it?
They're in Bakersfield's usually the first Monday in October. Franklin is November.
Oh, theirs is
Theirs
late.
is November. My former bookkeeping client was Franklin, so I know that from paying them.
I'm confusing
They're
them with
November. Most municipalities in this area, because I did have just recently go through this discussion with Bakersfield when I was there as well, looking at different ways to increase the cash flow, was looking at the biggest option would be to, like John said, change to quarterly or biannually.
Yeah, I was
or
gonna
the-
say,
Anything would help. I mean,
if the
That's really
quarterly
the only
gave you a,
big
a bad
options.
feeling, there are some municipalities that do half year, so you could collect in June, and then again in whenever, October, November.
Well, what's the typical debt service load for a year's worth of finance interdepartmentally? Like, how much do we spend in interest to borrow money just to make it through the year?
That's, I don't have the figure off the top of
Yeah,
my
I don't
head
either.
because I'd have to, and every year is different as far as how much needs to get borrowed and how much has been borrowed. We typically charge it at a 1% interest rate, so it's not crazy significant, but it's still added, it's still an added cost.
Yeah,
Still
that's,
has,
you never
right.
get it back.
Right,
So
exactly.
if we borrow $50,000, it's gonna cost us $500 to
Right.
take that money, and how much, like, I understand that postage isn't free, but you could mail bills out and use the money that you would normally spend.
I think it's an ongoing problem a lot of municipalities face. Like I said, not just to talk from Bakersfield, but coming from Bakersfield and working there, this has been a heated discussion for the 3 years that I was there, trying to come up with a better way because, as you said, you're operating essentially 10, 11 months off of no money because you're not collecting until the end of the year. We're fortunate that we have, like where the wastewater is cash flow heavy, that we have them to borrow from and not having to reach out to other financial institutions. But it's definitely something that I'm willing to do some more research in if the board wants on the process of changing that. I think there is a process with leagues of cities and towns just to make sure, our I's are dotted, T's are crossed. But I'm happy to
Information is
look
always
into
good.
that because to alleviate the cash flow issues that would be
Right,
pretty
like
significant.
when I first bought my house, I was under the impression that if you're collecting taxes in 2021, that is to pay for everything that happens in 2022. Does that make sense, budgeting wise, right?
A lot of
Well,
municipalities,
essentially, the board hasn't even created a budget, then, as you know, we don't even
Right.
have our budget done.
Right.
So I was under the impression that you're collecting, because it's not like the world's just gonna end. so
a lot of
you're budgeting
municipalities,
next
right?
year, right?
A lot of
But it turns
municipalities
out
are changing
Yeah,
to
it's
that.
the
Unfortunately, the big drawback of that
You have two taxes.
is that you are paying for a year, 2 year, 18 months to 2 years of taxes in 1 year because you have to adjust the cycle. Highgate recently did it. Montgomery has recently, I say recently, so within the last 5 years, has done it. And I think Fairfax either just did or is in the process of doing that because everybody's running into the same issue. Essentially, you're operating for 10 months with no money, essentially.
That's what makes, yeah.
The one, if there is a silver lining, the one silver lining in it is at least we're paying the interest to ourselves now. We're not paying it to a bank. When I first started here, we actually used to take out what are called tax anticipation notes, or TANs for short. And we would do that at a commercial bank, pay the interest, but the bank would get the interest on that. And I'll tell you that the interest was a lot more than 1%.
You lost it forever.
Right now,
and
they're about
that's just-
3%.
And then, you know, we finally realized, I don't know, I think maybe it was around like 2008 or 2009, we realized, you know, we should really stop doing this. Let's try and work it out so that we can split some of the costs interdepartmentally and have the general fund draw down from the municipality. At least then the interest we pay, we have control over. The board can, you know, determine what that interest is going to be, and it goes back to ourselves. So we're paying it to another department at all. At least it's staying within the municipality.
At least that makes sense.
So it is a little better than, you know, the way it was, you know, 12, 15 and longer years ago. But good questions, all good questions.
That's kind of what I have for now. I am definitely open as you guys look through these reports, if there's any changes, even if it's something small in formatting that you would like to see, or more specific information, less specific information, please let me know. I'm, like I said, I'm still playing with this every month that I'm looking at it and trying to decide how I want to present it to you guys. So any feedback, if you have any,
You know, I think this looks
Greatly
good.
appreciated.
Look at just a general overview of what's happening. If there's any numbers that stand out, we can.
right, if there was something that was cause for concern, obviously I would have highlighted it, but after kind of going through everything, right now, I personally feel we're on a pretty good track for the rest of the year.
Do you think the general fund will have enough operating cash to go until tax time, or?
I think it's gonna be pretty close, but based on looking at the last couple of years, I think we should be okay, barring anything major happening at this point in time, but it's gonna come down to the wire, in my opinion, but I think we should be okay. Obviously, we'd like to avoid having to borrow any more,
Yeah, absolutely.
but, so I think it's gonna come pretty close to it, so we should be okay, but,
Okay.
thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. A lot of work.
All right, other business. Anybody got anything?
Last meeting, Eli and I were by the street over there, and we were talking about the beautiful falls of Enosburg Falls. We turned around and all we see is brush
So,
from the street, yes.
You're the ugly end of the bridge.
Yeah, we don't even see the falls, all we see is brush. And Eli says, "This is terrible." He says, "Boy, I'm gonna bring this up at the next meeting." Well, Eli's not here, so I'm speaking up for him.
So what do you want, just like the brush on the edge of the river to be trimmed?
Well, you go look at it, and it's a riverbank. I mean, our view is, you gotta go on the bridge if you wanna see the falls.
So you're talking about if you stand out right in front of the
Yeah.
office, right
Yeah.
here,
Yeah,
this
right out
little
here on the
stretch?
little road, yeah.
People
It's
come pay
grown
their
up
electricity
terribly.
bill, and all what they think they're in the forest. You know?
I wouldn't mind looking into it, but I do know that there's, some sort of a vegetation next to waterway law or something.
Yeah, you can't just go in and it's riparian zone, it's on a riverbank, you can't just go in and hack away all the trees and
I don't mean hack away all of them, leave the nice ones,
you have to
but a
have,
lot of it is just riverbank brush that, not appetizing, it's not what you call beautiful, and we're trying to make the village more beautiful. We could plant some nicer trees. I'm not talking about spending money here, we're just, you know, put a nice red maple out there that turns red in the fall. That would be attractive next to the falls.
I guess we could talk with you more about it, I don't really have, I got one guy in the Public Works Department that's working right now. You know, Kenny's on vacation, and we have an employee that is out with a medical issue. So we only have 3 guys in the department. That one
Sandy
guy-
and I will come with our chainsaws.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Leatherhead. Okay now, that's why I joined this group. Okay.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, I'm happy to, you know, talk with you and Eli if you have some specific suggestions. Honestly, nobody has ever said that to me before, ever.
Well,
But,
sometime during the day, it might be worth it for all of us to just stand there and look and see what we think.
yeah.
You know, you come and go to work, you know, we sometimes live with blinders on, and not because we don't want to see things, but because we just have other concerns, and we all should be aware of our surroundings.
Yeah, we'd have to look into the environmental issues too, because that is real. It's a riparian area. There are regulations as to, you know, the type of work you can do within, I believe in Vermont, it's a 50-foot path that you have to leave from the river's edge off from, you know, the embankment. And in some places now they're saying 100 feet.
I think it's 150 for lakes.
I know
It's
like
150.
a cornfield, you know, you gotta leave so much by the river that you can't touch.
Yeah.
I'm not,
So I'm just saying, there are some concerns, depending on what you have in mind. I'm not saying that, you know, something couldn't be done, but I don't know if you're gonna get the view that maybe you're thinking you're gonna get of the falls from that particular spot, because it's pretty flat through there. I mean, what you see really from that angle in front of the building is kind of flat water. To see a version of the actual falls, you gotta stand at a different angle. Like if you stand on the bridge, because you're higher up, you can actually see the falls and what they're doing.
I agree.
Or if you go over to the other side of the river, where there's greater access points, you can see, you know, kind of above where the falls are from either the Bridge of Flowers and Light, or just above them if you walk to the other side of the riverbank, just north of where the bridge is. So or the best view, actually, in my opinion, the best view of those falls is if you walk further down Duffy Hill Road to Island View Park and walk down the embankment to where the river edge is along the rocks, and just look straight up. To me, that's the best view of the falls.
That is, it's
You get,
beautiful.
you know, that kind of half crescent view of the Bridge of Flowers and Light, and you're looking right through that half crescent into the falls. I think that's the best view of the falls.
It is. I'm just talking about when you come to pay your electric bill,
Mhm.
you turn around and you see that. It seems to me there could be something a lot nicer.
Okay. Well, as I said, I mean, I'm happy to talk with you and Eli. Probably it'd be a good idea if Gary was there as well to
I was gonna holler to
see
Gary when he
specifically
was walking out, but
right, what's on you guys' mind. I'm just, you know, I'm just saying we need to think about some other things though too with it.
Where are the cops gonna hide if all the brush is down?
What's that?
So where are the cops gonna hide if all the brush is down?
There, we solved one problem.
Yeah, have to go ahead on Church Street.
But yeah, you know, why don't you talk with Eli and we can, if you want, I mean, we can set up a time where the four of us can go and, you know, sit out front there and see what you guys have in mind. And
Well, like tonight, when we walk out, just look across the road. Even though it's dark. I know it's dark, but,
In 2 weeks, we'll look when we come to it.
okay.
All right, is that it for business tonight? If so, our agenda is right, we'll be adjourning almost on time tonight.
Wow.
I need a motion.
Move we adjourn.
Sandy the first, the second.
I'll second.
The second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay.